All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Hockeycards.se, the podcast, a new episode. And I'm thrilled to tell you, everyone, that David M is back here. My favorite Tennessean. Is that what you
That's
say
right.
when you're from Tennessee? Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
How many other Tennesseans do you know there, Patrick?
None, actually. So it's a very
Okay.
short list
All
of
right.
people.
Yeah. Well, I'm honored
Yeah.
to be here.
Well, welcome back, and glad to have you here. So we're doing this in the early and late Sunday morning and afternoon because I am in Sweden and you are not. So we have a
Yes.
6 hour time difference here.
That's right. 6 hour time difference. We both got kids. We both got families. We both got jobs. We both got lives. So, yeah, this is
Yeah.
9 a.m. Eastern time on a Sunday morning is about the only time we could squeeze this in.
Yeah. And it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon over here. So it's
Yeah.
time to wrap this up soon to go make dinner for the kids. So
Oh, there you go. Okay.
that's
We
where
just
I'm
had breakfast. So,
So, in this episode today, we're gonna look at our top three disappointments from the last season. So, this might be a long episode and a bit of a rant. So if our listeners aren't very happy with that, I suggest you speed up to the next episode where we're going to talk about something else entirely. That's where we're going to talk about the top three highlights and surprises of last season, so all the positive stuff.
right.
Do you want to go first, David? I know you've.
I can go first. I can go
Yeah.
first. So you mentioned I'm from Tennessee. You know I'm from Tennessee. I live about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes away from Nashville, Smashville here as we call it. So you know right away what my number one disappointment is going to be. And I would say that even for non-Preds fans, just hockey fans in general coming into the year, this would be a disappointing team. It has to be, right? With all the off-season moves that Barry Trotz made.
Yeah.
The big acquisitions, Stammer and Marcia, so Brady Shea, like this was from a team that already had that 7-game series the year before. There were already some hopes. Now, last year going into it, there was no expectations, so it was a big thing. And now this year we go get all these great free agents. Like, oh man, here we go. So make
it was
a run.
A big splash over the summer. Huge.
It was a big splash over the summer, and absolutely a just garbage performance all year long. And I listen to a lot of like Pred specific, content and podcasts and stuff like that. And a lot of people were trying to temper expectations, right? As you should, because, the national media about said, oh, watch out, big Stanley Cup contender here. But no, it's a brand new team, basically, right? I mean, they're stars, a lot of them, but, there's more than one line. What are the line combinations going to be? Who's going to play with it? So you had to temper some expectations and you had to think, okay, well, they're going to need a little bit of time to adjust, a little bit of time to gel, a little bit of time to build chemistry, all that kind of stuff. And it just never happened. All right, so Burnett was there, last year, maybe even 2 years ago. And last year they kind of made that improbable run, right? And they had that, but they would not have made the playoffs if not for that. I don't even remember how many games in a row it was. That huge point streak they went on 2 years ago. They got them in it, but they were just playing lights out, okay? And then Forsberg had a monster year. Of course, Roman Yossi's always awesome. Juice had a great year, but it was just like all these young guys, this young talent was gelling. Just some great defense, the system seemed to work, right?
Yeah.
And Andrew Burnett has a very specific system, okay?
Yeah.
That system did not work for this team and these players at all. Okay.
Right.
Andrew Burnett's system is an extremely aggressive, what's the word I want to look? I guess almost risky in a way of saying it, where it's almost like in any other sport, like in a football or soccer, right?
Yeah.
You're just going to go for the steal every time and you're going to take off. Or you're going to have guys in basketball snowbird, right? It's almost like you're trying to set up for the easy goal later on. But that doesn't always work, right? In fact, it fails a lot of times. So that system is reliant upon extreme speed and, just extreme just aggression, right? This team didn't exactly have that, okay? And this team isn't built for that system. The problem is, and I'm not just saying this as someone who watched it. I'm saying this in like listening to interviews with the players, like postseason interviews with the players, like they've all talked, right?
Yeah.
Stammer's a little more, he's a little nicer about it, but like Marchessault is not afraid to like kind of put it out there and say some of the things that need to be said. He was still very, what's the word I'm looking for? Restrained in some of his comments, but basically the same gist you get from everybody is that Andrew Brunette was not willing to adjust anything in the system other than constantly change the line,
the line combos.
The line combos. Thank you.
Yeah.
And it was almost like every game, and I watched almost every game. He just threw everyone's name in a hat and did this. And it was like, oh, all right, Stammer, you're gonna play with it. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it just did this whole thing.
Yeah.
And there was never any chemistry. There was never any. There was nothing, right? And you didn't know what you were gonna get on any given day. And it just didn't work. And the players looked lost, right? Like it would be like if I was out there, right? You know, so I don't know what I'm doing. Like, and that was kind of what it looked like a lot of times. There was just zero. It was almost like there was no plan. Everyone's just out there skating, doing their thing. And
because it's so weird. I mean, if you look at like from a stat sheet perspective on the Preds this year compared to last year, you see that, holy shit, they've added some pretty big names to this roster, and the players who are still there this year, who had pretty decent seasons last year, sort of fell off a cliff. I mean, if you look at the point production and the amount of goals that Philip Forsberg scored last year compared to this year, he's way down, and he's not the only one either.
Oh, right, and that's one of the things too is like, who's going to center these guys? You got Marchessault, you got Stammer on these wings. Stammer had to play center a huge chunk of the year. And it's like, and he's happy to do that. It's fine, but that's not really what needs to be happening, right? Yeah. And, you know, you did have some injuries happen, right? I mean, Roman Josi was out for, a good long while there at the end. What was he out the last 2 months? Last month at least, month and a half. You know, I mean, you had some things like that, but at the same time, though, to me, it was more, and not just to me, I mean, to a lot of people, it was more a failure of adjusting within the system and trying to adapt your system to work with the players that you have. Right. That didn't happen at all. And now to hear the players say it, Brunette was great as far as like, you know, he was able to make sure the guys had some fun. That seemed to be like a big theme. Like his biggest thing was wanting his players to be happy and have some fun, right? And that's all well and good, but you take guys like that are used to winning, veterans, and now they're just mired in this season-long funk. They're not used, and they all. And think about this too. They all moved their families, right? You know, Stamkos moved his family from Tampa. Been there his whole career. And comes to Nashville, and this is after he kind of felt like he got slighted by Tampa. It's already not a great situation. And then you just completely, you know, and Tampa, which I've been to many times, I love Tampa, it's lovely, it is definitely different than Nashville, Tennessee. And you know, same thing. I can imagine Marchessault, you know, leaving Vegas, moving his family, you know, and coming to Tampa. And Vegas is really a different world. You know.
I remember I saw an interview with Victor Hedman when Stamkos was moved. Because I'm not sure if they've been there the exact same amount of years, but they've been in Tampa for their entire careers, both of them, in a very long time, and were like best friends and hang out all the time. And now they lost each other, so it's that as well. I mean, it's of course extremely rooted with friendships and things in the organization and outside the organization, is being pulled up, being thrown away to some other team, and then changing position to center and and a team that is just generally underperforming. But
Oh yeah.
So Barry Trotz basically in the GM role then sort of opened his wallet and pulled in some great names.
Yes.
And your coach there puts them in a naive, aggressive system with very little tactical flexibility. And here we are, and no playoffs. So what's going to happen now?
Well, it's kind of more scary than just that. Like there is a true sentiment, a true fear, especially if you listen to like Jonathan Marchessault's kind of comments he made postseason. I don't want to say, again, he was pretty judicious in what he said, but you could tell what he and all the players were kind of getting at is basically something has to give here. They're not calling for a new coach. They're calling for some flexibility and adjustment, whatever. But the big kind of fear right now is if he doesn't, like if he's not willing to adopt some things, adapt some things, and if he's not, if Trotz isn't willing to move on from Burnett, then you might see players like the ones they just got, Stammer and Marchessault in particular, demand trades. And say, let's just, because this is not where they came to finish off their great careers and do all this over the next bunch of years. No, they didn't come to mire in this sort of, I mean, that was hideous. That was ugly. That was ugly hockey. You know, UC Saros had a really bad year, but half the time it wasn't his fault. I mean, there was no defense in front of him. You know what I'm saying? It was just like target practice for a lot of teams. So something has to give. Excuse me. Again, either an adjustment in the system to the players that he has, and they figure out how to make that work. Or we move on and we get someone else. And I think when you look at it, it doesn't help that you saw another team in the NHL do that this year, which I'm sure we'll get to in the next episode. One of my highlights, spoiler alert, that did that exact same thing. They made that move that needed to be made, and they made it within 45 seconds of the guy becoming available and became successful. You know what I'm saying? And they're still playing hockey. And the Preds, you know, so they are.
But do you think Trotz will sack Burnett or is he safe? Because there's a lot of teams who've been firing coaches over the last week and a half.
I don't think he will over the offseason, but I think what we will see, and this is just some guy that doesn't know talking here, I think he's going to give him a little bit of time next year to see what adjustments he's made, to see what see what they look like next year. But if something doesn't happen pretty quick into next year, I think that's when you're going to see it happen. But will it be too late by that point? See, I don't. You know,
it's so interesting. I mean, there's this saying that's so very true. I mean, there's no team that'll win the league in October, but there are plenty of teams who can miss the playoffs in October. I mean, if you get a completely shitty start, you can be out. Well, maybe not October, but by Halloween, you could. You could be in a very, very bad spot very quickly.
Well, there's also losing the locker room, and I think that you know. So one of the things that Marchessault said. So again, and Marchessault, when you preface your post-season press conference by saying, "Now you guys know I'm kind of can shoot off at the mouth sometimes and say things I probably shouldn't." When you preface that, you know what I'm saying? It's almost like, you know, when you're in conversation with someone now, listen, I'm not racist, I'm not sexist. And then the next thing that you say is going to put, you know, Marchessault kind of did that thing. And at one point in his presser, he went on and on and on about how Vegas kind of did things and how Vegas made adjustments and how he could talk to the people in Vegas and have like closed door conversations, but actually things would happen and things would like, you know what I'm saying? Like when you actively come out and say you prefer other coaches to your current coach, that's kind of a
that's a big thing.
And he did the whole compliment sandwich thing, right? Like he started off nice, then said all that, and then he's but he made sure we had fun. So Barry Trotz he unloaded a lot of people too. So they have enough cap space to go maybe try to get a decent center, right? To kind of help. And so there's some things I think Trotz is going to – I don't think he's willing to throw in the towel yet and call it a rebuild, because I think if he does that, you're going to see
yeah.
Right. And it was – I don't think that's going to happen yet. I'm hopeful that's not going to happen yet, but we'll see.
That's the top. You went from the top on your top 3 list. You started with your biggest one. So
yeah, those are numbers 1, 2, and 3.
Those are numbers 1, 2, and 3. Okay.
Yes. I made numbers 4 and 5 for the purposes of the show. Right. Yes, 1, 2, and 3.
Brilliant. Well, I'll stop. I have a list of 3 items. I'll stop at. I'll start at number 1 then as well. So we start from the same perspective. So, you can see from my hat where this is going to start, I think. So the New York Rangers, or maybe we should just rename them the New York Dumpster Fires after this season, because I've been trying to understand what's been going on. It's the NHL is a very tight-lipped organization. There's not much information being put out. It's not much information being let slip. You have like this horde of journalists called insiders who know someone who calls them sometimes and gives them a rumor, but it's generally pretty tough to get to know what's actually going on. The Rangers, they were the President's Trophy winners last year. Basically, that very same team with a few modifications came into this season and couldn't win a game. The exact same players, basically the exact same players, they all fell off a cliff. I mean, people can have off years, people get older, people can be out of shape or whatever, but not all of them at the same time, and not all the star players at the same time. It's not like with the Preds, who brought in new people, new system, they need to click. It's the same people, it's the same coach, it's the same system, it's the same management, and nobody's performing. So clearly not playing their best game. They're clearly not playing for each other or for their coach or for management either. So what happens next then is that Chris Drury, then the general manager, he sends an open public letter to all the other 31 GMs in the league that ends up in the newspapers with a list of what star players he wants to trade, with names like Chris Kreider and Jacob Trouba, Trouba is their captain, and they made him captain the previous season, and he's been celebrated for his grit and his passion and all that. And it didn't get better after that, the performance. It got even worse. And then the management basically bullied their captain into being traded for the Ducks. He had a no movement clause. He wanted to stay. And they basically told him, we'll put you on waivers if you don't agree to trade. So they publicly bully and humiliate the person they made captain 1 year ago and send him off to the Ducks. And then there was this thing last autumn as well, which was very weird, that they introduced rules against players and staff socializing. So the staff around the team were not allowed to socialize with the players or the coaches anymore. So they couldn't go to dinners, they couldn't go to events, they couldn't socialize or so I'm told from what little information you have, right?
Right.
So you're like, okay, what kind of what kind of organization is this? What kind of place to go to work to is this if you're forbidden to speak to certain people? And then I'm not sure if you saw it, but like 2 weeks ago, there was a big headline in the news about a plea bargaining settlement on sexual assault charges from one of the Star Rangers players and a staffer in the team. So, Of course, we don't know what happened or if anything happened, but at least someone tried to sue someone else. So that's probably where that rule came from. But all of this, it's like, and then you have Peter Laviolette, who is, I don't know if he stopped coaching. I mean, he like with the Preds, he were throwing people around in the different line combos and things. But he had a statement here towards the end of the season when they lost again, and the journalist asked him on the presser, what are you going to tell the team? And he said, Oh, I don't know. I typically don't go into the locker room after games. So if that's not giving up, then I don't know what is. You're not going into the locker room after games. I wouldn't call that leadership. I'd call that a lot of other things, but not leadership. So there has to be something here. There has to be something here that's for everyone to perform this poorly. All of a sudden, there has to be something going on with culture, communication, leadership, trust, accountability, and it could be within the player group. But I think it's not only there. I think it's also they're not prepared to play for their coach. They're not, and they're not prepared to play for their management either. I think with all these very public, very bold, sometimes not very friendly moves that's been pulled by the management over the last season. So I don't think, this is a personal opinion. I have no inside knowledge, of course, of this, but from all the stuff I'm reading, there has to be some sort of trust issue going on between players, coaches, and the locker room. I think they've lost the locker room completely. So that's and now last thing in the news last week was that Chris Brewer got a massive extension as the GM. So clearly the owner is siding with him, right? So that means that something else has got to give now. So it's going to be a very interesting summer, I think, and there could be a lot of players being cleared out. So if the Preds are looking for anyone, I think there will be quite a few Rangers players available.
Well, yeah, and it is interesting though. So New York, the big city lights, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, exactly what you talked about. Players, staff can't fraternize, can't do whatever, and then it comes out, like you said, just a week or two ago about Panarin. Yeah. It's like, oh boy, here we go. You had, I mean, even dating back to, it was preseason, I guess, where you had Igor Shesterkin, was in those kind of heated contract talks and all that stuff.
Yeah.
They paid him all the money, and he did not have a great year, right?
Yeah.
You had, and so I'll speak to here a little bit about just from a fantasy element, right? I love the fantasy, even the stats and all that stuff. Chris Kreider, horribly disappointing year. Lafreniere, who looked like he might be about to really finally break out.
Exactly.
Adam Fox didn't have a good year. Panarin didn't have a good year. Now there's all this other stuff going on, right?
Zibanejad didn't have a good year. He is their first line center.
Yes, and Zibanejad had a bad year. I mean, it was just bad. And even with that badness, though, they were still in the hunt pretty late into the year. On a positive note, just been a positive. They were still in the hunt late in the year, whereas the Preds were out forever ago, and I mean, technically not, but really, so I will say that about. But what do you think is going to happen? Next year. I mean, what's the?
I mean,
are they gonna?
Well, first of all, I mean, they have, like, right now they have, if you look at their defense, the guy who's been a healthy scratch for like almost all of last season and the beginning of this one, Zach Jones, I think he's now in the second pair defense and getting like 22 minutes a game. And they've added 2 more guys to the lineup because they traded Trouba, they traded Lindgren. I'm not sure Miller is having a fantastic year. So I think they're going to need some really good defense people to fill those, because it's like they've just sent people away and gotten Scraps back. Scraps and JT Miller. But JT Miller has also had a worse production in Rangers than he had in Vancouver, despite him and Petey being at each other's throats all the time. He was better in Vancouver than he's been in Rangers, right? So
yes.
So they need to they essentially taken a big bunch of high profile players who are playing like first D and their captain and sent them away for a bag of peanuts. So, and they almost have no cap room either. So that's going to be a really bad struggle. They need to secure their defense. Then Shesterkin needs to be fantastic again. It's been that way in Rangers for ages, right? Before Shesterkin, you had Henrik Lundqvist, who had to steal games because to get them to progress far in the playoffs. So they need this star quality goaltender that can steal games.
Yeah.
And then I'm not sure what they're going to do on their offense, to be honest. I mean, they have this new guy, Will Cooley, who looks pretty good, rookie they're bringing up, but they don't have a great track record for getting their draft picks into first-class NHLer. If we look at Capo Kakko, Alexis Lafreniere, etc., etc. So I think Mika and Kreider might be traded. Actually, I know Mika has a full no move clause, but that didn't stop them with Truba. So maybe he will be playing for the Preds next year if you need a center.
We do. That'll work. Yeah, little handshake agreement right here and now between Sweden and the U.S. Yeah, well, it's interesting too, though, that like. So with the Preds and the Rangers, they released some pieces this year, traded away some pieces that actually found more success.
Absolutely.
Lesser teams, you know what I'm saying? And and I was actually going to bring up spoiler alert too in the other disappointment thing. That whole JT Miller, Elias Pettersson thing that was wild. So it'll be interesting to see how just with the full season of JT Miller, full off season of JT Miller coming back to New York, we'll see how that translates next year too.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be. I mean, he is clearly a very special kind of person. I mean, it's not just his conflict in Vancouver with Elias Pettersson. It's also all the other conflicts with everyone else he's having in all locker rooms he's ever been in. So he is very competitive, and maybe that's what Rangers. I mean, Rangers they are a pretty extreme organization, like you say, big city lights. The biggest, baddest team, et cetera, all the media exposure. They're going to need a new coach as well. So I think that's going to be an important, because it has to be a coach that can build a locker room and not lose it. I think the only way out from this is to be able to strengthen the team with whatever they can do with the limited cap space they have, work some magic in some trades maybe, and then get a coach that can get this locker room welded together and also hold it accountable, both to themselves but also to their coach, and help facilitate the communication that clearly isn't there with the management. I think that's going to have to be worked at. I think they should all just take a trip out in the woods a week, no food, no beds, stay there for a week, get to know each other, and come out a happier group, I think.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes with JT Miller tenting up with somebody. We'll see how that goes.
All right, David, what's your number 2?
It's Vancouver. As I talked about there, because again, a team coming into the year with a lot of promise, a lot of expectation, and just it's one thing when teams don't necessarily perform. It's another thing when it's like a toxic environment, a toxic locker room that's helping to feed some of that and fuel some of that. And it's like, man, you guys have the talent. What's going on here? And you had that with JT Miller and with Elias Pettersson. Pettersson had a horrible year. I mean, from every angle you want to look at it, he just had a bad year. And, and I don't know all the ins and outs of what was going on there. I really don't. But, just a wildly disappointing team. Thatcher Demko never got healthy. That didn't help, right? He was out forever, but there was still that whole and maybe I'm wrong about this, but in my mind, it was like, oh, he'll be back soon. And then it was like, he'll be back soon. And then 3 months later, halfway through the year, all right, here we go. And then he comes back. It seemed like he played 3 games and was out again. I'm sure it was more than that. But you know what I'm saying? Like, just it felt like it was nothing. And then he's out again. And then so you didn't really have a lot of that. The goaltending definitely wasn't stable. Let's put it that way. But again, and Quinn Hughes going down certainly was a blow. But just a team with that much promise, I really thought, and like your Rangers, right? With the Preds, I wasn't all bought in on the whole, they're going to make some big run. I knew in my mind they'd make the playoffs, and clearly that's where that disappointment was, right? Like they're not even competitive. But with the Rangers, I really genuinely thought your boys might go all the way, but I also thought Vancouver could too.
Yeah.
And just to see what happened there, that to me is disappointment number 2. Not that I'm a fan, because I'm not, but just as far as expectation versus reality, that was my number 2.
Yeah. All right. My number 2 then. If we spent as much time on our number 2s and 3s as on our number 1s, this could be a very long episode. But I think the rest of the list will be a bit quicker. We're less emotionally involved in those teams.
Yes, correct.
But my number 2 has to do with my kids' favorite team, which is the complete destruction of the Boston Bruins. Which is, I mean, you've had a great decade with one Stanley Cup title about a decade ago, and you managed to keep this going. It's like this dynasty. People who have left, like Zdeno Chara and other excellent players, they have been replaced with players like you have a dynasty with Patrice Bergeron and Tuukka Rask, and you've had Brad Marchand, who started off maybe not the typical star player, but who became one eventually. Mm-hmm. And now it's time again then. So Bergeron says goodbye, Krejci says goodbye, Tuukka Rask gets injured, says goodbye. And at first it looks like they are actually able to bring in the right people because they win the President's Trophy. They set the record, the NHL record for most points in a season. Linus Ullmark, the new goalie and replacement for Tuukka Rask, wins the Vezina. They have a rookie goalie who is outstanding in Jeremy Swayman, and everybody is performing so incredibly well. And then you start this season, and you trade away your Vezina winning goalie for essentially someone who is going to be your backup goalie because you want to go for your great rookie, right? Well, that's fine. But what I don't understand in that trade is I think it was like they gained like $1 million in cap space.
Mm-hmm.
So you trade a Vezina winning goalie for a backup for $1 million in cap space. And then you publicly bully and humiliate your now starting goalie because you don't want to sign his contract. You want him to be the starter of the Boston Bruins, and because he's so fantastic, so he actually trumps the Vezina winning goalie, but you don't want to pay him any money. And then you're out swinging in the media and making actually what was turned out to be untrue statements just to get him to sign, right?
Yep.
Okay. So he starts the season hating life. And you bring in Elias Lindholm from Calgary to replace Patrice Bergeron, and he's injured. He's been playing injured since September, throughout the season, having a bad year. And it just goes on and on from there with injury problems. Like you got Charlie McAvoy got injured. He's been injured all spring. Hampus Lindholm, their second best defender, got injured. Been injured all spring. So they've been playing essentially without a defense and with a goalie that wasn't as good this year as he was last year, and who has had to take a lot more games and with a lot worse defense in front of him. Mm-hmm. And then you start looking at this, and that they trade other players and they bring in players like, who are these people that are playing? Like they had I think one of the main reasons for the extreme success that Boston Bruins had maybe the previous 2 seasons is that I would argue they had maybe the best third line in the league. Mm-hmm. They had Charlie Coyle, Trent Frederick, and for a while Nick Foligno before they traded him to Chicago. Fantastic players who could play third line or second line and were physical, were like power forwards, they could skate, they could do assists, they could score. They've traded all of them away and added them and replaced them with other people who are not Trent Frederick and Charlie Coyle and Nick Foligno. And I saw now I watched some of the, because I don't like sleep, I watched some of the Avs Dallas game last night, and Charlie Coyle was playing with Nathan McKinnon in the third period.
Yeah.
So I mean, fantastic players, and they're bringing in. Well, we have some prospects. We'll bring them in and give them some games. I mean, they won't stand a chance in the short run to do that. So it's essentially like it's a clandestine teardown of the team. And to top it all off, they trade their now franchise icon and captain to their biggest rival. So Marchand needs a new contract for the next year. He is the Boston Bruins. I was in the arena in Boston in February last year when he had played his 1,000th game. I saw that game live. And he got his silver stick and had this huge ceremony before the game for 1,000 NHL games. And now a year later, he needs a new contract. And he says, hey, guys, I've been playing 15 years here on team-friendly deals. I have a couple of years left. Want to pay me some money? And they say, nope, can't do that. We're going to trade you instead. And basically, so when I listen, maybe this is a cultural thing as well between Sweden and North America. I don't know. But when I listen to sort of American reporters and Canadian and news media, and so it's always about, well, it's a business. It's a business. Everyone knows it's a business. You make business decisions. Well, you can make business decisions without pissing people in their face. I mean, I'm pretty sure Marchand, and he said that in his first press conference, dressed all in Florida clothes, he said that he was prepared to negotiate. But the Bruins just said, no, we're going to trade you.
Yep.
And Marchand said, apparently, the only team I want to go to is Florida because I want to win.
Yep.
And I think they can win, right?
Yeah.
So they then trade him to their biggest rivals.
Yeah.
so I'm sitting here and I'm saying, okay, well, they're going to fire Cam Neely and Don Sweeney now for tearing this down. But no, they're not, because the owner a couple of days ago came out and said that we're fully committed to rebuilding this team and taking another swing at it next season. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do in the summer, because again, they don't have a ton of cap space and everyone is underperforming or injured.
Yeah, you're right. And I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll go ahead and touch on my third team because I thought I was going to be clever. And because I knew you were going to pick the Rangers, I was going to pick Boston as my third. So basically my backup team to talk about was the team you just talked about, which is Boston.
Yeah. Brilliant.
So, but again, going back to what you said, like just even the not little things, but like, Cam Neely openly discussing to the media about the whole stuff with Jeremy Swayman, like that.
Yeah.
Probably not should have come out. You know what I'm saying? That needed to be in-house. There needs to be some in-house stuff.
Yeah.
And
in addition, he wasn't completely truthful.
Right.
He said publicly a figure that wasn't true. They hadn't offered him that money.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so like, again, there needs to be that dynamic of keeping things in-house, right? And he certainly didn't do that. And then you're going to fire Jim Montgomery. And and what happens? Again, was it 45 seconds later, like as soon as it went out on Twitter, X, MySpace, whatever the hell, AOL Messenger, he was hired. He didn't even have to set up like a ZipRecruiter thing. He was already hired. And look at what happened in St. Louis. And so, you're right. It was a complete dumpster. And if you had Brad Marchand ending up on the Florida Panthers on your bingo card coming into the year, but let me tell you, I mean, if that was a prop bet you could have made in Vegas heading into the year, you'd never have to work again. Like, I don't get it, man. I don't get it. You mentioned those third line pieces.
If you want to build a team, right? You need passion for the organization. Mm-hmm. You need grit. You need to have someone to hold people accountable. You need someone who is chewing barbed wire for breakfast, who lives and breathes for the organization. Brad Marchand is that kind of a player. How the hell do you not want him on your team? It's beyond comprehension. And you're right. I can't believe I didn't mention Montgomery. But so you have one of the definitely best coaches in the league. And because of a slump and underperformance, it wasn't like they were about to miss the playoffs, right?
Right.
Because of this underperformance from people playing injured or being bullied and not playing to their full performance or being traded away, they fired the coach. And he had a new job like 2 minutes later and doing extremely well, of course. Extremely successful in St. Louis. So,
and, it almost seems to me now, of course, again, I don't know financials. I don't know, all the stuff that GMs look at and all that stuff. But like, it almost seems to me like a case of, they did the classic mistake of it wasn't broken, so they fixed it. You know what I'm saying? Like that's, you had everything rolling. And then you just, because like you were even mentioning again earlier, the third line pieces, right? The Charlie Coyles of the world, the Trent Fredericks of the world. And I can tell you, like, even coming from like a fantasy hockey perspective, again, a stats thing, boy, those guys were great options.
Yeah, of course.
Great numbers. And when you're talking about, you can stream guys in fantasy from third lines and stuff because they're doing a great job, and from second lines, that's awesome. Like these guys were putting up some good stuff. And it's, again, it wasn't broke, so they decided to fix it. It's what it seems like, So, but especially, with firing Montgomery and with just, anyway. I mean, and good on Linus Ullmark. He's done well there in Ottawa. He's, so that's, hey, good on him. But they definitely that was a big surprise. Big surprise.
Yeah. All right. So, but then. So that was your third team on the list. So then
that was my backup team because, my real team was the Rangers. Because honestly, to me, the Rangers coming into the season, I genuinely thought the Rangers were going to play for the Stanley Cup. I really did. So they were my real number two, but I knew you were going to wax poetically about them way better than me for 45 minutes. So I was like, I better have a backup, which was Boston. So
okay, but then we're down to just one team left, and it's my third team then. So I need to go on a rant again. Yeah, but I'll keep this a lot shorter. But I think maybe this isn't the third biggest disappointment of this year, but it is a perpetual disappointment of the league, I think, and the Buffalo Sabres. The young, talented Buffalo Sabres, who are wasting the careers of 2 first overall picks in Rasmus Dahlin and Owen Power, and it's amazing to when you look at the stat lines, you see that so Rasmus Dahlin, first overall pick, who is arguably around the top 10 best defenseman in the league, physical, great skater, high energy, could play 60 minutes probably without ever taking a seat, and can score and assist. He has 0 playoff games after 7 years in the NHL. 7 years. So he came over very young. I think he's like 25 or 26 now. So he still has some very good years left, but they're wasting his career. And that guy hasn't asked for a trade is beyond me, because I'm not into the Sabres so much, so I have any idea on what they're doing or not doing or should be doing. But they seem to have a lot of young talent and not stacking good enough players around them, sort of embed them with more seasoned veteran players who knows what it takes to do a playoff run. And they also managed to hire the least wanted coach in the NHL for this season, which is amazing. I don't know if you saw that, but I think it was The Athletic. They do this poll every season, and they ask the players a lot of stuff anonymously. And so one of the question is, which coach would you least want to play for? And Lindy Ruff in Buffalo got the most votes out of everyone. Clear winner. Yeah. And there was even you could leave these comments, like free text comments when you answered, and there was one player who had written in his comment that I don't even think he understands the game anymore.
Ooh.
So that's
yeah.
That's the kind of coach you bring in. And then with the management, I'm not sure if back to your previous comment about management and what what they're doing to run the business. I don't know what they're doing either, but it seems very clearly that to me that management in Buffalo are a bit disconnected maybe from the actual hockey, right? So I get this feeling, that they're running the organization through spreadsheets and finances and KPIs and what people are reporting to them, maybe more than being involved in the actual hockey operations and seeing what's actually happening in the organization. That's
Right.
a feeling I get from reading a lot of articles from all these insiders that's floating about. But so the question then, I mean, do they have actual contact with the ground, or are they just listening to reports and saying okay or yes,
Or
no?
does ownership and leadership have any interest in building a good hockey team, or do they only
Mm.
care about the business aspect of it? Right. Do they
Yeah,
only care
yeah,
about trying to make some money for them?
yeah, yeah.
I can point out several, it's a big thing in baseball, right? So like in baseball, there's no salary cap. Okay.
Right.
They put, it's some people would say it's kind of a salary cap. There's a luxury tax, right? But there's no real hard cap. But one of the big things, and it'll probably lead to a work stoppage in 2 years, is, owners want a cap. Players are like, hell no.
Yeah,
But there needs to be some kind of floor, because there's also not a floor. And you've got a couple of owners out there who genuinely could care less about the fans, the product they put out on the field, and it shows. And it's not just this is a 1 year, 2 year thing. No, this is going back ever since like current ownership has had them, right? You've got a team out there that doesn't even have a city to play in right now. Like they're playing in a minor league ballpark, and it's all due to pitiful ownership. They don't care about the product on the field. They're looking at bottom dollar. They're looking at nothing but analytics. It's like there's no baseball people in it, right? And I kind of have to wonder sometimes, like, in all sports, but so in Buffalo, like, are there hockey people in it that actually want to put a really good team on the ice, or do we care more about business? And again, I don't know. But that's just one thing, like, to your point, you've got all this young talent, and, and if you put nothing around them, you're going to keep getting young talent, because you're going to keep missing out and getting, what I'm saying? Like, but eventually that young talent grows old or grows weary and just, hey, I want the hell out of here. Let me go play for a contender. Right. Like, so I don't know, man. Yeah. They definitely need to get doing something now. Right. I mean, you've got, there's a, when you have true Buffalo fans kind of tuning out, which I've heard some say, in our YouTube community, right? Like just, it's rough. It's painful to watch,
So I remember when we followed the Bruins because it's my kid's favorite team. And when they brought in Linus Ullmark as goalie to replace Tuukka Rask, he was in Buffalo before. So they got him from Buffalo. And the first reaction I had, and a few other people around me had, oh, he's going to be great. He's from Buffalo. He faces 50 shots a game. So I mean, they're known for being consistently bad,
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. And and there was a lot of hype, kind of about UPL and all that stuff. But like, it's not. I mean, when you're giving up 6 goals a game or whatever, I know it's not really 6, but you know what I'm saying? Like, kind of feels like it sometimes. Anyway. That's a great pick. Great pick.
All right. Well, this was fun. Getting to vent all the frustration from the last season, being extremely non-positive or constructive, and just rant.
Yeah, that's right.
So next episode will be a list of our top highlights and surprises of the season, and maybe be a bit more positive. Yeah,
absolutely. The world needs some more positivity, so let's do it.
But before we get to the end of the show, David, I know you like food. So what's the best food you've had last week?
Okay. So this is going to sound really weird. I am addicted, and I do mean addicted, like, to eggs and onions, which is going to sound gross to a lot of people. Caramelized onions specifically. But one thing I do every day I come home from work is I whip up some caramelized onions while I cook the kids' food and my wife's food, and then I throw some scrambled eggs, sometimes some meat, whatever it is in there, right? So that's not interesting to anybody. But one thing I will say is this. So as far as like dinners go, like, you know, for me, I eat kind of the same 2 or 3 things all the time. It's either a big salad with some chicken or steak in it, or it's eggs and onions. But I will say, and I try to not take in the desserts as much as possible. But my all-time favorite dessert is a thing that is, I don't know if you've heard of these. They're called chess bars. You know what chess bars are?
No.
Okay. It's similar to what's called an ooey gooey butter cake, which is like a staple of like St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay.
I've never had a true one of those, but it sounds similar. So a chess bar is something like my mom always made them. It was always my favorite dessert. It was amazing, right? And I always assumed that they were pretty tough to make because she kind of made it sound like a big deal to make them. And then she gave me the recipe. And so 2 weekends ago, I pulled that recipe out because I was craving them. I'm like, I'm going to try my hand at it. It was for Easter. You know, we were having the family over. We were hosting Easter and all that stuff was the plan. And so I'm like, I'm going to make these things so she doesn't have to. Man, it's like 3 ingredients. And it took maybe 10 minutes to assemble. You bake them in the oven. And I mean, it could not be any more simple to do. And I say that to say I'm in a lot of trouble because the ingredients are all cheap. It's quick and easy to do. And it's the best thing ever. And probably the least healthy food you can possibly have. So like, I'm going to go ahead and sign up for my diabetes medicine subscription and all that stuff because this is bad. I mean, literally all it is yellow cake mix. You purposefully get the proportions wrong for the consistency to come out a certain way. And then it takes an entire 16-ounce bag of confectioner's sugar and like, you know, some more eggs and stuff like that. Anyway,
Holy shit.
Make it. Yeah, oh yeah.
Well, aren't you like this keto guy, no sugar and things?
Yeah, that's my problem. This is what I'm getting at. This is going to be a big issue for me because it was so easy to do. And I'm like, oh, damn. So I was at the store yesterday trying to be a good boy. And, you know, and I'm making sure I've got my onion supply and all this. And I'm like, you know what I don't have? I don't have any yellow cake mix. I don't have any confectioner's sugar because I'd used all of that. While I'm here, let me get some of this so that if I'm ever having a bad craving, I whip some of these up. Man, I tell you, if you've never had them, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to send you the recipe. I don't know.
Please do.
So this is a cultural thing. I assume all Swedes are very healthy people. There's no such thing as diabetes in Sweden.
We only eat tomatoes.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Fish and tomatoes and drink water that you catch in a bottle from a stream that comes down a mountain from snow melt. Yeah. Okay. That's what I figured. Yeah, that's right. So, but I will send you the recipe for how easy this is. And if nothing else, you can make it for the kids. And, but I'm telling you, man, it is out of sight, but it is diabetes waiting to happen. I mean, you got to be careful. All right, yours. Cool. What you got? What's your food? What's your go-to?
Well, I mean, we have 2 kids. They're twins. They're 10 years old. So it's a lot of, you know, school practice, play an instrument, play a sport, all that. So days are pretty busy. So it's mainly pretty quick and pretty fast. And also the amount of dishes that the kids really love isn't exactly very, very many. But I'll pick one which I actually made last Monday, I think, and I'm picking that just because, again, it's a cultural thing. I don't think you've had this. So this is sort of a staple Swedish dish, which is served a lot like in schools and things, popular with kids and youth, and so it's basically, if you translate it word for word, it's called sausage stroganoff, and it's basically you take a sausage. It's a special kind of sausage we have here, but you can probably use anything that's not super spicy, right? Any kind of sausage. You take that, you dice that up, you fry it with tomato puree and a bit of olive oil and salt, pepper, and you put in some sort of mustard that you like that has some taste to it, so a bit stronger taste. Mm-hmm. typically use some French Dijon mustard, but anything that has a bit of a punch, and dairy cream, basically.
Okay,
And you first fry up the sausages, and then you let that boil for a little bit. You fry up the sausages with the other ingredients, put in the dairy cream, and you let that boil up for a bit, and you serve it with rice and green salad. So
okay, interesting.
I'll
So the one of my dad's favorite dishes is beef
uh-huh.
stroganoff.
Yeah. It's very similar, but it's with
Okay.
sausages instead. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and again, maybe my mom did it wrong, right? I don't know. I don't remember tomato puree, but maybe it was in there. She didn't make it very often because he was really the
Yeah.
only one that liked it. But I remember there being pasta instead of rice.
And not in this, and not in ours. No,
Okay.
no. It's well, you can have it with anything you want,
We
of course, but
Americanized
it's
it, right?
typically
Like
rice. Yeah.
okay, gotcha. Yeah,
Yeah.
like we Americanize in America, we Americanize all right, like Chinese restaurants. Half the stuff isn't really Chinese. It's flavored for the Americans. Like Mexican restaurants, same thing, right? We're a border country. Like if you want to get proper Mexican food, you're not going to get it in most Mexican restaurants here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
It's the same thing. It's the same thing over here. It's sort of adopted to a palette of. I mean, Sweden is now a pretty prosperous country, but for a long time was very poor. 19th century had a lot of people who left the country and moved to the United States, settled Minnesota, among other things. And so very, very poor. So most of the food tradition is poor man's food, very
yeah.
not a lot of taste, not a lot of spices. So when everything came here in the early 20th century, like Chinese restaurants and stuff, they also adjusted to a palate that doesn't use spice typically. But that's thankfully with the increased globalization, that has changed now. So now you can go downtown here and you can go to a Swedish-fied Chinese restaurant or a proper Chinese restaurant and get your throat burnt up by all the spice.
That's what I like. That's my kind of thing. Yeah, I love going to a good Thai place and asking them to crank it up to 11. And yeah.
All right, David, it's blast. It's been a blast. I think we've maybe reached the end of the patience of our listeners. So.
Oh yeah, we reached that probably 46 minutes ago, but we'll see.
Most likely. Thanks to everyone who's still listening, and we'll be back with another episode with a bit more positivity to it. So thanks, everyone. Bye.